If you look at the data, there is a clear decline, systematic decline in the trust people have in election commission. This should be a big worry for election commission, that the trust of the common people is going down. I think this data should be an eye opener, that it's not only the trust of the opposition which has gone down, it is also the trust among the people for election commission has come down. The data clearly indicates that. It should worry the election commission that an institution which was trusted very highly, the trust is going down drastically.
Yes, indeed. And remember, percentages as large as 22% in Madhya Pradesh, 30% in Delhi, 31% in Uttar Pradesh have no trust at all in the Election Commission. That is a very worrying large slice of the population.
Absolutely no trust. This is a very clear-cut answer. We have no trust, and people only give such kind of a response when they really have no trust. Look at the data of 2019. The number of people who said no trust is very small, all in single digits, almost 6%, 7%. From moving from 6% to 22%, 25%, it's a huge jump, and this is an indication of how people are losing trust in the election commission.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. A critical, if not fundamental, question regarding the special intensive revision of the electoral rolls presently underway in Bihar, and which the Election Commission plans to hold nationwide, is the availability of the documents that are required. Lokniti-CSDS has done a survey in 5 states and the National Capital Territory of Delhi about this precise issue. Its details were published by The Hindu on Saturday and Sunday. They lead to disturbing, if not also distressing, conclusions. Joining me now to discuss the survey is the co-director and professor of Lokniti-CSDS, Sanjay Kumar. Professor Kumar, I want to focus this interview on the survey you have done in 5 states and the National Capital Territory of Delhi on the availability of critical documents needed for the special intensive revision of electoral rolls. First of all, you find that 83% of people have either not heard at all or are not sure of the details of the special intensive revision. Doesn't that mean that when the special intensive revision happens in states like Assam and Bengal, most people won't know what it is or how to respond to it?
You're right, Karan, because what would happen is that especially in West Bengal and Assam, there is a lot of anxiety, curiosity, suspicion about what's happening in Bihar. And they are curious, they are suspicious that when it comes to Bengal, because Election Commission has already indicated that they will carry out the SIR in Bengal and in Assam and in other states. So people are already anxious. There would be suspicion. What is Election Commission up to? So people would not know how to respond. I think people who know that SIR is being conducted in Bihar, they may be busy collecting their document, because one thing they know, that now a document is being required to have your name registered in the electoral roll. So you're right that there would be confusion, suspicion, anxieties among the people in the states where SIR will be conducted. As I said earlier, Election Commission has already indicated they will conduct SIR in Bengal and in Assam very soon.
And in fact, according to today's Hindu, they've also indicated that SIR will be conducted in Orissa very soon. That's in the paper today. Now, the second critical finding is that 5% of the over 3,000 people you spoke to, and that includes women, urban voters, Dalits, Adivasis, Muslims, and Christians, don't have any of the 11 documents specified by the Election Commission and therefore cannot qualify to remain on the electoral roll. Do you deem that 5% a large number or a small number?
No, I think it's not that 5% cannot be on the electoral roll. Of the 5% voters who don't have any document, suppose if their name already exists in the electoral roll prior to the date on the cut point decided by the election commission. As in the case of Bihar, the date cut point is 2003. So in every state, whatever would be the cut point, if your name is in the electoral roll prior to that, then you don't require any document. So it would be a wrong reading to say that 5% people in these states who don't have any document, their name cannot be on the voter list. Yes, if many of those whose name doesn't exist prior to the cut date, which will be decided by election commission, their name cannot be on the electoral roll because they don't possess any document. And
Absolutely. Anyone who doesn't have documents and their name exists on the electoral roll after the cutoff point. The cutoff point in Bihar is 2003. After the cutoff point, will be on the
absolutely.
electoral roll. Now, that's why I ask, is that 5% figure understood to be large or small?
See, the data in itself doesn't speak in a sense. We need to compare 5% whether we consider it as small or large. But I think uh, any person who is eligible to be enrolled as a voter, and for some reason, and just for the reason that he or she doesn't possess a document, if his name cannot be on the voter list, I would consider it as a big issue. So 5%, I would consider it as a large number of all the eligible voters who should be on the electoral roll, whose name should be on the electoral roll. If there are 5% people who cannot be considered as a voter, I think it is a large number.
Now, of the 3,054 people you covered, 58% of those in Uttar Pradesh have no documents at all. In contrast, only 3% of people from West Bengal and only 1% of people from Assam have no document at all. How do you explain this vast difference between Uttar Pradesh on the one hand and West Bengal and Assam on the other?
So this is the bifurcation of the 5% people who don't have any document. So we have done a survey. This is not representative of the state, but we actually tried to go to mainly the lower class and the poor class people. And the reason was very simple, because the expectation is that people who belong to the middle class and the upper class income, they would have larger number of documents compared to those who belong to the poor and the lower class. This should be treated as indicative that yes, a large number of people in UP doesn't have any of the document, but the numbers are slightly much smaller in Assam and in West Bengal who don't possess any document. Remember, these are also the states where we have a very large number of Muslim population, and since the last few years, the way they feel that sometimes there is a NRC, and then sometimes some other issue comes up. So I think they have also been trying for the last few years to obtain some documents, and that is why the percentage of people in Bengal and in Assam who don't have any document seems to be lesser than UP.
Except that UP has a fairly substantial Muslim population as well, 19-20%.
But if you compare it with Bengal and Assam, Assam has roughly about 39-40% Muslim population, and Bengal also has roughly in the range of 30-35% Muslim population. Compared to that, UP has much smaller, but I do agree that it is slightly surprising, and we need to look into this in slightly more details.
Let's, Professor Kumar, focus on birth certificates, which is the critical document required by the Election Commission. 52% of your sample simply don't have them. 66% don't have their father's birth certificate. 70% don't have their mother's birth certificate. If that's representative of the country as a whole, then presumably the vast majority of people don't have birth certificates. Am I right?
See, I would not consider the sample as a representative of the country, but I would go along with the findings, even though the sample may not be representative of the entire country. Why I would go along with the findings? Because it is true that a very large number of people don't have their birth certificate. Birth certificate is an urban phenomena. Also, during the last 20, 30, 40 years, if I look at 6, 7, 10 people in my extended family, my two children only have the birth certificate. I don't have a birth certificate. My wife doesn't have a birth certificate. My mother and my father never had a birth certificate. And I keep counting number of people who don't have a birth certificate. Because when we were born, there was no practice of getting a birth certificate prepared by the municipality or by the hospital. It is only an urban phenomena which has come up only during the last 3 or 4 decades.
Now, interestingly, you also have a variation between states in terms of possession of birth certificates. Of the 6 states you covered, in Madhya Pradesh, 70% of people don't have birth certificates. In Uttar Pradesh, it's 56. In Assam, it's 51. But again, in Bengal, the percentage drops to 36. What explains that? Why do many more people have birth certificates in Bengal and far fewer in Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Assam?
Uh, See, what's the big message? The big message from the data, if we for a minute ignore all the states, or even if we consider all the states, the big message is that a very large number of people don't have birth certificate. Yes, it is uneven in different state, and we should take it as indicative. I'm not sticking my neck out that yes, it is 36% in West Bengal. It cannot be 40%. It cannot be 39%. But it is indicative that a very large number of people don't have birth certificate. Remember, in Bengal, if I think some explanation could come from maybe slightly larger. We have in Bengal we have a slightly bigger sample from the urban location, and that's why we have a much larger proportion of people who are having the birth certificate.
Okay. Now, interestingly, your survey breaks down possession of birth certificates in terms of caste, but also in terms of economic class. Let's first look at caste. 61% of scheduled caste people don't have a birth certificate. 79% of scheduled caste people don't have their father's birth certificate. 85% of scheduled caste people don't have their mother's birth certificate. So, in terms of birth certificates, the scheduled castes are the most disadvantaged of all castes. Would I be right in saying that?
Absolutely. This goes along with the initial criticism of SIR. What SIR might do is to make the disadvantaged people more disadvantaged in terms of voter registration. And this is coming out very clearly. If you look at the number of people who have birth certificate is higher among the upper caste, upper class, and the number of people who have lesser number of birth certificate, whether it is their own birth certificate, whether their parents' birth certificate. So people not having birth certificate of their own or their father and mother is higher among the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, much less among people who belong to the OBC and the upper caste.
And something, Professor Kumar, very similar emerges when you look at possession of birth certificates in terms of economic class. 61% of the poor don't have birth certificates. 81% of the poor don't have their father's birth certificate, whilst 84% of the poor don't have their mother's birth certificates. So just as the scheduled castes are the most handicapped in terms of caste, it's the poor who are the most handicapped in terms of economic class. Is that right?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, yes, the people who are on least advantage and at the disadvantageous position, whether it is in terms of class or whether it is in terms of caste. So you have rightly pointed out the data which we have put out in Hindu, that if you look at the proportion of poor and the lower class people in terms of economy, the number of people who don't possess birth certificate, either their own, their mother or the father, is much higher among the lower class people, poor class people, if you compare it with the upper class people in this country.
Now, there's something else, and almost the opposite of birth certificates that your survey establishes. The
Of course.
Aadhaar card is the one document that practically everyone has, whether you look at people in terms of their caste or whether you look at people in terms of their class. Possession of Aadhaar cards ranges between 98% and 100%. Doesn't that mean that if the Election Commission wishes to be inclusive when it's creating electoral rolls, the Aadhaar card is the document they should rely upon?
That's the demand which is being made by the people who have done made petition in the Supreme Court, and that is the demand by all the opposition parties, that make Aadhaar card as a document, treat Aadhaar card as a document, or treat the Epic card as a document, as a proof of ordinary living in that locality, as a proof of residence. Because the data clearly points out Aadhaar is a document which is possessed by a very large number of people in the range of 90, 95, 93, 97% people. Because most of the welfare schemes, the benefits of the welfare schemes to the poor is actually channeled through the Aadhaar card, Aadhaar registration. That is why everybody want to get the Aadhaar card prepared. And this is coming out very clearly from the data that whether you belong to a scheduled caste or upper caste, whether you are poor or rich, the proportion of people having an Aadhaar card is almost equal among people belonging to different caste and people belonging to different class.
Now, as you mentioned yourself a moment ago, on the 14th of August, the Supreme Court ordered the Election Commission to accept Aadhaar cards. Does that mean that many, by no means all, but many of the 65.6 lakh people whose names have been deleted from the draft electoral roll now on the basis of possessing Aadhaar cards could be included?
Absolutely. If you go by the numbers, we did not do the survey in Bihar, but there is no reason to disbelieve that if the situation of Aadhaar vis-a-vis people having Aadhaar in the 6 states where we did the poll would be very different in Bihar. So if Aadhaar is treated as a proof of residence, proof of identity, then many of those whose name have been deleted from the draft electoral roll, because Election Commission keeps saying this is the draft electoral roll. 65 lakh people's name have been deleted from the draft electoral roll. All those names, or a very large number of those names, would be included in the final electoral roll if Aadhaar is treated as a document of identity.
And this underlines, in a sense, the importance and significance of the Supreme Court telling the Election Commission, you have to accept Aadhaar.
Absolutely. This is a very basic demand by large number of people, including opposition. And now Supreme Court has also given an instruction that Aadhaar should be treated as a document of the identity of the voter. And if that's done, then I don't think that the hue and cry which is happening in the country about SIR, that will completely subside. And then there will be some anxieties about other things, but deletion, unlawful deletion, that issue will settle down drastically.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Let's at this point, Professor Kumar, broaden our discussion. Your survey also raises critical questions about confidence levels, both in the special intensive revision, but also in the Election Commission as a whole. You say 45% people believe that genuine voters could get removed. And secondly, 58% of people either have no confidence at all or very little confidence in the belief that the Election Commission will ensure inclusivity. Doesn't that suggest a pretty serious lack of faith and trust?
There is a separate question which we asked about the trust in Election Commission, but the data which you have read out right now clearly indicate there's a lot of anxiety even before we did the survey, and the survey captures the mood in other states. But if you go to Bihar, look at the kind of anxiety and among the people. A lot of, I think for the last couple of months, 1 month, little more than 1 month, everybody is busy talking about whether my name will be included or not. People who are away from Bihar, they are very anxious that should I go back to Bihar, get my name included, whether my name will be there or not. There is a lot of anxiety, and this data also indicate that this anxiety is also among the people in other states, that whether uh, like election commission, the exercise which is being carried out by election commission, through this exercise, whether names of eligible voters, names of genuine voters will be there in the electoral roll or not. So I must say that there is a lot of anxiety among the people in Bihar. This is also being expressed in the survey among the people in other states as well.
I'll just underline for the audience that 45% of people believe that genuine voters will get removed. Not that they'll be included, but that they will be removed. And 58% of people have either no confidence or very little confidence that the Election Commission will ensure inclusivity. And that leads me to that critical question you have in your survey about the Election Commission itself. In 5 of the 6 states, the percentage of people who have no trust in the Election Commission has risen, and risen pretty sharply in the last 6 years. It's gone from 6% to 22% in Madhya Pradesh, from 11% to 30% in Delhi, from 11% to 31% in Uttar Pradesh. This is a finding that should seriously worry the Election Commission. Am I right?
Absolutely. There is a systematic decline. We have put out the data from 2019 Lok Sabha elections, then 2024 Lok Sabha elections, and the survey which we conducted recently. And you have read out, you made the comparison from 2019 to 2025. But if you look at the data, there is a clear decline, systematic decline in the trust people have in election commission. This should be a big worry for election commission, that the trust of the common people is going down. If you remember the press conference which was held by the election commission, they kept addressing the voters. They kept addressing them as our voters. So maybe the opinion shared by in the election commission is that trust of the opposition in election commission has gone down. I think this data should be an eye opener, that it's not only the trust of the opposition which has gone down, it is also the trust among the people for election commission has come down. The data clearly indicates that.
In fact, the Election Commission in its press conference kept referring to voters as our voters, our people.
Yes.
But the opposite is also true. The voters don't necessarily look at the Election Commission as our election commission. They have doubts and concerns about inclusivity. They have doubts and concerns whether their name will be removed.
No, to be fair to election commission, yes, the trust in election commission has gone down, but still, if you look at the data, a majority of the people still trust election commission. But it should worry the election commission that an institution which was trusted very highly, the trust is going down drastically.
Yes, indeed. And remember, percentages as large as 22% in Madhya Pradesh, 30% in Delhi, 31% in Uttar Pradesh have no trust at all in the Election Commission. That is a very worrying large slice of the population.
Absolutely no trust. This is a very clear-cut answer. We have no trust, and people only give such kind of a response when they really, really have no trust. If you look at the middling category, which is like moderate trust, this is ambivalent. People are ambivalent, but very high trust and like no trust. So look at the data of 2019. The number of people who said no trust is very small, all in single digits, almost 6%, 7%. From moving like from 6% to 22%, 25%, it's a huge jump, and this is an indication of how people are losing trust in the election commission.
Let's come, before we end, Professor Kumar, to what I believe are your conclusions. First, you say, and I'm quoting, the special intensive revision exercise as it's currently being undertaken is likely to lead to the deletion of many legitimate names on the grounds that they are unable to provide the necessary documents. That's an outcome the Election Commission doesn't accept, but your survey clearly shows that will precisely be the outcome that happens.
See, the data which has been put out by Election Commission at the moment, what they call, the draft electoral roll, they have already indicated that names of 65 lakh voters have been deleted. If they don't accept Aadhaar as a proof of identity, if they don't accept EPIC as a proof of identity, this is bound to happen. That they themselves, they will have to accept it because they have already put out the data that out of 7.8 crores voters in Bihar, names of 65 lakh voters have been deleted. So that's bound to happen, and be that will affect more the poor and the people who belong to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe.
Let me point out, Professor Kumar, that in fact 65.6 lakh is only perhaps the starting figure. There are a lot
Yes.
of people who have filed enumeration forms without their documentation. If they can't find the documentation, they presumably also stand the risk of being deleted. It's only the Supreme Court order about Aadhaar that has come as a lifeline to everyone. If the
No,
Supreme
you're
Court
right.
hadn't passed that order, these people would all be in jeopardy.
No, you're right. This 65 lakh voters' name have already been deleted. But remember, what has happened is that people have submitted their forms, and then later on, people were asked to submit the proof of identity. Many people may not have been able to submit the proof of identity, even if they had submitted the form which they were required to submit. If they are not able to submit the proof of identity, the number will go up because the election commission is not going to retain their name as the elector if their name was not there in the electoral roll in Bihar before 2003. So you're right, the number can go up very high, drastically high, if the big rider is they don't accept Aadhaar as a proof of identity.
An impressionistic article on the front page of the Indian Express 2 days ago suggests that in many constituencies in Bihar, visited by the journalist concerned, up to 15 or 20% of people who've submitted enumeration forms do not have the documents to support them. That is a worryingly large number. Again, as I said, the lifeline thrown by the Supreme Court that Aadhaar has to be accepted could save many people. But if that lifeline hadn't been thrown, these people would be in jeopardy.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. And I think there would be another issue because first people were asked to submit the document, submit the form, and later on people were asked to submit the proof of identity. Yes, it may be true that 15-20% people have not been able to submit any valid document. Also, even if they have submitted the document, there will be a problem. There could be a problem of matching those documents, matching the proof of identity with the original form. That will also create a lot of confusion.
Professor Kumar, your second conclusion is that those at the bottom of the caste hierarchy, as well as those at the bottom of the class hierarchy, what you call marginalized sections, will be the ones who suffer most. As you put it, the less privileged members of society stand the risk of being pushed to the status of doubtful citizens. It's the poor, it's the scheduled castes in particular who will pay the price.
No doubt about that. If you read the data correctly, we have figured out that people who belong to the lower economic class, people who belong to the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe, they are the ones who don't have large number of documents which are required for getting enrolled as a voter. So if you stick to the original document which has been put out by the election commission, that these 11 documents, then these are the people whose name would be removed from the electoral roll. So there's no doubt about that people who are on the marginalized ones, they will be the biggest sufferer if SIR is carried out in other states. That's going to happen in Bihar as well.
And therefore, once again, the lifeline thrown by the Supreme Court when it ordered the ECI to accept Aadhaar cards is one that will actually be a saving for the poor and for the scheduled castes in particular.
No, I like the word which you are using about the Aadhaar lifeline for the voters of this country. Absolutely, it will serve as a lifeline for the people, the marginalized sections of the voters, because if that lifeline is not available to them, a large number of them will get disenfranchised. Their name will not be on the voters list.
Professor Kumar, thank you very much for the time you've given me. I'm deeply grateful for your understanding and your willingness to help us analyze and understand your survey. Take
My
care.
pleasure. Thank you.
Take care, stay safe.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.